If I'm gonna die or ever be a sacrifice, I want to make sure that my life made at least 5 million kids happy. Alright, let's say worst thing comes to worst, I die a tragic death or some shit.
It's chilling that XXXTentacion's last recording before passing away was just released. He speaks of dying young in it, as if he had anticipated it. That's not all, however. Additionally, the rapper made some startling disclosures that are altering the way that people see his passing. Let's get started. The foretelling that rocked hip-hop at the age of 20, XXXTentacion was tragically shot and died in Deerfield Beach, Florida, during what seemed to be a robbery. This is where it gets insane, however, because this cat uploaded an Instagram live video only hours before he was bodied, and everyone thought it was prophetic. Let me explain why XXXTentacion was so significant in the first place, before we get into the details of this last recording. No. X was a completely different kind of rapper than the average one, attempting to get out of the neighborhood. A multi-genre performer who helped establish the SoundCloud rap and emo rap sub-genres, the young monarch was making sounds that no I had ever heard before by fusing hip-hop and emo with rock and trap.
I came up off like a lot of artists. Like I would go from all of that, like from rock to rap to literally Japanese instrumentals, like different Japanese songs. Like I was completely and utterly mesmerized by music.
What set X apart from all the other cats in the game was his adaptability and unadulterated emotional connection. This guy was speaking directly to the suffering, despair, and mental health issues that so many young kids in the neighborhood were facing, but no one wanted to discuss. He wasn't simply rapping about money, cars, and chains, though he could do that too. However, because here is when things start to become truly crazy, let's return to that last recording. Check it out. X posted this Instagram live video on June 18th, 2018, only hours before he was slain. And in this about 1-minute film, he's discussing some profound prophetic type topics with his supporters that, when you actually think about it, will chill you to the bone.
Alright, let's say worst thing comes to worst, I die a tragic death or some and I'm not able to see out my dreams. I at least want to know that the kids perceived my message and were able to make something of themselves.
Despite the negative connotations associated with his name, X said in this video that he hopes his music and message would provide joy or answers to at least 5 million children. It wasn't just what he said. However, it was the way he said it, as if he had anticipated something.
If I'm gonna die or ever be a sacrifice, I want to make sure that my life made at least 5 million kids happy.
The young king was discussing legacy and how he wanted to be remembered in the event that he passed away. He emphasized that their intellect is boundless and that their spirit should lead their body, urging followers not to let despair to define them. It was a guy speaking from the heart, as if he were running out of time, and this was not your typical motivating speech. The fact that the video was uploaded around 2 hours before to the occurrence is the portion that really made folks feel something. You all have 2 hours. This wasn't just rehashed old footage. This was brand new material that was published the day he was killed. You can tell this wasn't a coincidence just by looking at the time. However, it gets much more unsettling when you pay close attention to what X was saying on that video. Like he was delivering his followers his parting words of wisdom. He expressed love and confidence in them, encouraging them to dream large and pursue their ambitions with power. Now, I understand that some of you may be thinking, dude, this is just a coincidence. Rappers often discuss death and legacy, and guess what? You guys may have a point. Hip-hop has long been associated with death, as seen by Biggie, Pac, and several other artists who discussed their own impending deaths. But this is what was different in X's case. This was more than a trite line in a song or a casual remark made during an interview. Just hours before he was assassinated, he wrote this thoughtful, targeted message to his supporters. The combination of its detail, timeliness, and emotional impact produced a unique impact. Furthermore, let's face it, X wasn't living in a secure, suburban bubble. His childhood was characterized by familial difficulties, stress, and instability. Additionally, he had been juggling significant legal troubles. He was aware that the streets were observing him. His mother struggled financially, so his grandmother, Colette Jones, reared him mostly at Pompano Beach in Lauderhill, Florida. There is no silver spoon here. Coming from the trenches, X was aware of the dangers of his way of life. Let's not overlook his legal issues either. X was charged with 15 felonies at the time of his death, including witness tampering, domestic abuse by strangling, and aggravated battery of a pregnant lady. A few months before to his death, he was freed from house imprisonment on bond so that he could go on tour. It isn't a coincidence, family, that this young king uploads a video discussing his legacy and his wishes for being remembered only hours before he is killed. That guy recognized the truth of his circumstances and was attempting to leave a lasting legacy. The repercussions and cultural influence the effect of this last tape. however, is where things become even more bizarre. You see, this video didn't just vanish into thin air on the internet when X was slain. This song became a heartbreaking reminder of what we lost as it began to circulate everywhere and was shared millions of times. Its emotional impact was emphasized by supporters and media sources, who pointed out that it offers insight into his goals and state of mind. It evolved into a testimonial rather than just a social media post. A last letter from a young monarch who was aware that his days were few. Everything was really altered by the final recording. It altered the way that others saw X's passing, his state of mind in his last hours, and his creative legacy. This was not only a chance heist gone bad, this was the stifling of a voice that was attempting to heal a wounded generation and speak truth to power. And let's not mince words. Even before his death, X had a huge cultural impact. Millions of people were impacted by his songs, especially millennials and Gen Z, of whom 75% were aware of him and 65% had a favorable opinion of him. That last recording, though, that elevated his legacy to a whole other plane, the day that changed everything, from foretelling to disaster. Okay, everyone, we are now going to get into the specifics of what transpired on June 18, 2018. To put everything in perspective, XXXTentacion had gone to a bank to take out $50,000 in cash, which he was carrying in a Louis Vuitton purse. Now, some of you may be wondering, what the devil was this guy doing with 50 bands in cash? Having flowing cash, however, is merely a part of the lifestyle of young rappers, particularly those from the ghetto. If you know anything about their behavior, X arrived to Riva Motorsports, a high-end motorcycle and boat business in Deerfield Beach, Florida, after hitting the bank. He was examining bikes, most likely in an attempt to get something new for the summer. Getting some money, looking at various motorcycles, and perhaps making some music later was the plan for this typical day, another day in the life of a young monarch pursuing his ambition. However, on that particular day, someone else had other intentions for XXXTentacion. You see, 4 guys in a dark-colored Dodge Journey SUV were observing X while he was inside the showroom looking at bikes, and they were plotting something that would forever alter hip-hop. This is when things start to get very wild, since this wasn't just any heist. That day, the crew, which included Robert Allen, Trayvon Newsom, Michael Boatwright, and Dedrick Williams, had been organizing armed robberies. At first, they were simply searching for a lick, any lick, and weren't especially aiming for X at the dealership. However, they saw X. They chose to target him for the money he was carrying after recognizing him, perhaps because of his unusual look and automobile. Everything moved to the left at this point, because these scumbags believed they could rob a well-known artist and then just disappear. When Boosie made the statement, she was spot on. You see, rappers aren't seen as actual dangers by many of the kiddies on the streets. Since they are wealthy, often lack adequate protection, and frequently carry substantial sums of money.
Real street don't respect a lot of rappers. Real street don't respect rappers like that, unless you like that. I don't hope think if you be a gangster, if you be a rapper, that turns you into a gangster just because you rapping gangster.
See them as easy targets. Too many artists have been harmed or died as a result of this harmful worldview. These 4 men are attempting to dissuade XXXTentacion from Riva Motorsports. According to the timeline provided by court documents and CCTV video, the dark-colored Dodge Journey SUV obstructed his black BMW. What transpired next was captured on video, and I must say, the film is eerie. Michael Boatwright and Newsom, 2 disguised shooters, came up to Onfroy's car. Onfroy was hit in the neck and chest by several bullets fired by the main gunman. The fact that X's uncle Leonard Kerr was in the vehicle with him but was able to flee when the shooting began is what truly makes me angry about the entire event. How traumatized could the guy have been? Witnessing your nephew being killed in front of you while unable to stop it. After stealing the Louis Vuitton bag that held the money, the attackers ran away. Suddenly, they killed one of the most creative young hip-hop musicians for $50,000. It was too late when X was taken to Broward Health North Hospital. The harm was already done. The same voice that had been speaking only hours before, about bringing joy to 5 million children, about overcoming depression, and about having the courage to follow your ambitions, was permanently silenced. The fact that the gang had been organizing other robberies that day is what truly makes this entire situation absurd. This was not a sophisticated plot, a personal grudge against X, or a botched industrial feud. For men seeking quick cash, stumbled across a well-known rapper carrying a sack full of cash.
From your point of view, right? Explain to me why someone would rob a high-profile person and expect to get away with it, and be prepared to kill the person in the process and expect to get away with it.
It just got something. When you in that lifestyle, it's whoever. A lick is a lick, and a rapper is a sweet lick. Cause a lot of think rappers ain't gangsters nowhere.
However, it's obvious that these cats didn't consider the repercussions of their behavior. You see, you're not simply dealing with local cops attempting to investigate another street crime, no. When you injure someone with X's degree of notoriety and power, the whole weight of the legal system is bearing down on you. together with government resources and extensive media coverage. Witness testimony, mobile phone data, and surveillance video all pointed to the 4 suspects in the ensuing extensive investigation. These guys left a digital trail that was miles long, even though they believed they were slick. The operations lookout, Robert Allen, finally lost it and spilled the beans. In return for testifying against the others, Allen entered a guilty plea to second-degree murder and robbery with a handgun in August 2022. His testimony described the whole process in full, including the preparation, the execution, and the fallout. Allen said that when they murdered X and took the money, it was divided, with Allen getting $5,000 and Boatwright, Newsom, and Williams each getting $15,000. They estimated the value of X's life to be $15,000 apiece. Then you know how much.
And then, you know, is natural life worth how much? What was it, 30 G's? 40 G's?
15 G's each. 15,000.
Is natural life worth, what was it, 30 G's, 40 G's, 15 G's apiece, $15,000. They sacrificed everything for 15 bands each. As Tony Yayo so eloquently said, really, that's not even enough money to purchase a good used automobile, and they're prepared to commit murder to get it. This is where X's last recording, however, takes on even more significance. Recall that he was discussing his legacy, his desire to assist children, and his determination to defeat despair only hours before to this incident. He seemed to be aware that his time was limited and wanted to ensure that his message was heard before it was too late. Because Onfroy spoke of dying young, a prophecy that unfortunately came to pass. The video is sometimes referred to as creepy or prophetic. However, what really made it remarkable was not only the forecast, it was also the optimism, hope, and sincere concern for his followers that were evident in his voice. Everything was altered by that last tape, which revealed X's true identity. Behind all the controversies and legal issues, it revealed to us a young guy who really wanted to change the world in spite of his shortcomings and errors. And it hurts differently when you realize that they were really his last comments to his fans, very distinct. Justice done, and the last words of X's legacy. Anyone considering interacting with hip-hop musicians should be cautioned by the manner justice was served for XXXTentacion's murders. These animals discovered the hard way that there are much more serious repercussions than simply local street feuds when you mess with someone who has millions of admirers globally. Law enforcement thus wasted no time when X was slain on June 18, 2018. Since every effort is made to solve a case involving the murder of a well-known artist in broad daylight, the investigation was quick and exhaustive. These weren't your typical street guys who might vanish into the neighborhood and never be seen again. There is evidence of these cats everywhere. The culprits were apprehended quickly. Dedrick Devonshea Williams, 22, was taken into custody on June 20, 2018, and charged with robbery with a handgun, driving a vehicle without a valid driver's license, and dangerous and depraved first-degree murder. The wheels of justice worked so quickly when you meddle with the wrong person that this guy was already in arrest 2 days after they murdered X in the months that followed. The other 3, Trayvon Newsom, Michael Boatwright, and Robert Allen, were taken. Given the planned nature of the act, a grand jury indicted all 4 on counts of premeditated murder. The state pursued the highest charges because they weren't kidding around. The fascinating part, however, is that Robert Allen, who was essentially the lookout throughout the heist, quickly recognized he was in over his head. Robert Allen entered a guilty plea to second-degree murder and robbery with a handgun on August 12, 2022, he disclosed everything about his co-defendants. Now, some street cats may accuse Allen of being a snitch, but let's be honest. You'll attempt to rescue yourself when you face life in jail for aiding in the death of another person for more than $15,000. The prosecution's case was built on Allen's evidence, which provided a thorough account of the events leading up to X's murder. The actual trial was a different matter. In Florida's 17th Judicial Circuit, the trial got underway on February 7, 2023. Under the direction of Circuit Judge Michael Usen, everything was provided by the prosecution, including mobile phone data, security film, DNA evidence, and Allen's thorough testimony.
Apparently, when the guys went out to the murder vehicle, the murder truck, to lie in wait for these people, they waited in the truck for like 8 minutes, 35 seconds. So she's giving her closing arguments in the trial, and she's telling them about this and how, you know, premeditation works, and you're sitting there and you're planning and you're waiting, you're thinking about this, you know you're going to do it, it's intentional.
One of the trial's most impactful events was recounted by Tony Yayo for 8 minutes and 35 seconds, exactly how long these animals sat in their vehicle plotting X's murder. The prosecution forced the jurors to remain in total quiet. How did it feel in the courtroom, do you think? I sat in complete quiet for 8.5 minutes, wondering how these men had that much time to decide to change their minds. To avoid ruining many lives for a little sum of money, using surveillance footage from Riva Motorsports that documented the robbery and shooting, cell phone data that included location information, and Bluetooth connections that connected the defendant's phones to the crime scene, and DNA analysts testified that the defendant's DNA was found on masks found at the scene. The prosecution assembled a strong case. The defenders made all effort they could. They even attempted to include Drake in the investigation, alleging that X's murder was somehow related to his feud with the Toronto rapper. However, the court rejected the defense's efforts to present conspiracy theories, ruling that there was no proof of Drake's participation. That defensive method was deemed fake even by WAC 100, an expert in the field.
Right.
You have his attorney.
He's been saying. He's saying that he killed XXXTentacion because of Drake. Because Drake.
No, listen. You have the attorney saying a lot of things, right? Me personally, I don't think that's Drake's style.
Attempting to place the blame on Drake when you have eyewitness accounts, DNA proof, and security film just makes you seem desperate. The ruling, which was rendered on March 20th, 2023, was prompt and definitive. Boatwright, Williams, and Newsom were found guilty of armed robbery and first-degree murder. None of their justifications or conspiracies were accepted by the jury. The punishment was significantly worse. Judge Usen sentenced the 3 guilty defendants on April 6, 2023. 28-year-old Michael Boatwright received 2 consecutive life sentences, without the possibility of parole for armed robbery and first-degree murder, along with 30 years for probation breaches. Trayvon Newsom, 24, and Dedrick Williams, 26, were both sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of release.
Let's just say they're all 25 years old and they live to the age of 65. You know what I mean? They pass away at the age of 65. They're going to be in jail for 40 years. That $15,000 breaks down to $375 a year for the rest of their life.
When you truly think about it, Tony Yoyo's breakdown of the arithmetic is catastrophic. For $375 a year, these cats will be imprisoned for the remainder of their natural lives. That is less than what some folks pay each month for their phone bill. Cooperating with the prosecution, Robert Allen received a significantly reduced sentence. He was sentenced on May 17, 2023, to 7 years in jail with credit for almost 5 years of service, 2 more years of imprisonment, and 20 years of probation. In fact, he was set free in the beginning of October 2023. The reality of prison politics, however, is that these cats aren't only coping with life in jail.
Life is over, nigga. Nobody want to do that. A lot of rather be dead than do life.
They have to worry about X's admirers being imprisoned with them. For the rest of their lives, they will have to live with that truth every day.
Think about a dude that grew up listening to XXXTentacion. Now his killer is right here eating lunch next to you.
There were millions of admirers of X, and some of them will undoubtedly end themselves behind bars. For the remainder of their lives, these guys essentially made themselves targets. Let's return to the reason why X's last recording is still so important. However, see, the Instagram Live video had a whole different significance following his passing. It became his farewell message to the world and was no longer only a social media post. His last remarks to his admirers, he foretold what was about to occur. The question's use of the word changes everything probably alludes to the way that this album alters how people see his passing by, presenting him as a thoughtful and upbeat musician in spite of his contentious background. Many people never saw the side of X that was shown in that video, the one that cared about his followers, that wanted to motivate children, and that was battling his personal issues while still attempting to convey positive.
Hell of a loss at someone that I felt was nowhere near his height.
People thought he was scratching the surface, but he was only showing not even 5% of what he could really do.
One of X's best. Pal's wife's funeral perfectly encapsulated the sorrow of what we lost. X was only starting out and was just now starting to realize his full artistic and personal potential. We get a glimpse of the guy he was growing into in that last recording, someone who, in spite of all the negativity he had encountered, wanted to utilize his position to promote love and happiness and assist others. Even now, the effect of that video is still felt. As of February 2024, X's last Instagram post before to his death has 32.5 million likes, making it the 11th most liked post on the site. Millions of people continue to see that last tape, find motivation in his remarks, and identify with his message. Let's not mince words. X's impact on hip-hop culture endured. Numerous musicians, including Billie Eilish, Juice WRLD, Kendrick Lamar, Lil Nas X, Trippie Redd, and Kanye West, have been impacted by his ability to merge genres and his genuine emotional content. He invented that emo rap sound. That's all over now, and it all stems from what X was doing.
I meant it at the time in the sense that I see them as very similar figures, in the sense that, like, when I think about Pac, he seemed like he was just so open and just feeling everything and just constantly just like releasing his emotions on you through his music and his interviews and whatever. And I got a lot of that same thing from X, that I felt like the fans were just overwhelmingly dedicated to him because he was just feeling shit. Like, he was so emotional and he was just so out there presenting himself to you.
When you consider the influence both singers had on their respective generations, Adam 22's analogy to Tupac really makes sense. Both were youthful, provocative, honest about suffering and adversity, and they both departed from us much too soon. But this is what makes X's last recording so potent. It demonstrates that, despite his darkest times and his awareness that he would not be here for long, he continued to care about his fans. I'm still working to promote optimism. I'm still working to change things. The true legacy of XXXTentacion lies not in the controversies or legal issues, but rather in his sincere want to assist others in recovering from the same suffering that he was experiencing. Everything changed when we realized that X was simply a young guy trying to make sense of his life. Despite all the turmoil and headlines, attempting to assist people by using his voice, attempting to leave a constructive legacy, knowing what was about to happen, he decided to share love rather than hatred in those last few hours, hope rather than despair, putting the needs of others above his own. His murderer's life sentence felt like justice because of this. They silenced a voice that was attempting to heal a generation, not only took a life. A narrative was just getting started when they cut it short. A legacy that may have improved the lives of millions. X's last words, however, endure and continue, to transform everyone who hears them. That is the final recording's true power. It's more than just a death prophecy. It's evidence of the power one person can have when they decide to put others before themselves. Love before hatred, and hope before despair. Check out our other fantastic videos on the channel if you liked this one. We appreciate your time and we'll see you again soon.